1/3 of the way through the 2026 baseball season. We're going to take a look at where the players are in terms of reaching 5 WAR this season, where the teams are, and what this week in baseball was all about. You know what we haven't had in 2026 so far, and we didn't have
good time.
Well, hold on a second. Just wait. As if you're a Met fan, yeah, no doubt. I'm wearing orange today, by the way, and that is in honor of not the Mets, the New York Knicks, because the Met fans right now, like me, are saying, "Let's go Knicks."
Yeah. There's not a lot going on. We briefly crawled out of last place in the NL East to promptly get swept by the Marlins and get put right back there.
They still can't hit, and the May Mets, which we're looking up, are looking more like the April Mets,
right,
at this point. But what we haven't had in 2026, and we didn't have in the entire season in 2025, is a no-hitter.
It's been a while since after we had a run of them that one year.
Exactly. So, and I think, part of it is, number one, it's really hard to pitch the whole game right now as we see fewer and fewer complete games. And so the no-hitters we seem to see more of now are these combined no-hitters, which are just the least sexy thing, by the way, in terms of a baseball.
It makes sense just because you're not going to leave a guy out there to die on a no-hitter. You're not going to have a guy throw a 130-pitch no-hitter like they used to.
You do see managers lifting guys like, look, I got to take you out. You reached the pitch limit. So, and the old-time pitchers, and I kind of feel the way they do, going, let the guy try until he gives up a hit, for God's sake. So
it's just tough though, because we see how fast these innings can go wrong, and let him go until he gives up a hit. It's like, okay, it really only takes 1 or 2 hits to really get a rally going. So if you leave a guy out there and he gives up a hit, then you leave him in for one batter too long, all of a sudden a close game isn't anymore.
We did that yesterday. We were watching the Met game, and we're like, okay, is he going to leave this guy in for one more hit to try and get another out? And no,
came right out.
Mendoza came out and took the guy out. Didn't help the Mets win the game.
It was the Marlin pitching. That was a Marlin pitcher.
It was Clayton McCullough who did that, right? He said, okay, you reached the end of the line. I'm getting you out of there. And it was the right thing to do, obviously, as it turned out. So, we're 50, depending on where you are. It's Monday, Memorial Day here when we're recording this. So, after today, some teams will have 54, 55 games. Some teams will have 53, 54. But we're a third of the way through the season at 54 games.
Things are pretty much kind of roughly holding where they've been kind of now for a while. There hasn't been any kind of major shakeup recently. Teams have kind of held pat. The biggest change has been the Guardians have really asserted themselves now at the top of the AL Central over the last week or so, because they've gone 8-2, and now they're the only team in the division with a winning record.
Well, I think the bigger story is the Tigers losing 16 out of 18 since Skubal went down, and so that's going to make life a lot easier for the Guardians.
You were previewing what might have been my potential story of the week, which was going to be Tarek Skubal is not going to be a Tiger at the end of this season.
I completely agree.
Right, and I think we could just talk about that because it isn't my story of the week. But yeah, there's no way Tarek Skubal is going to be a Tiger at the end of this season.
Well, and I sort of suggested my lead story of the week, which is I want to go through the 5 WAR players in terms of who's on pace for that this season.
So before we get into that, I do want to talk about Skubal, because I do think it's interesting that we looked at the Tigers off season this year and we're like, okay, yeah, they did everything right. They made their moves. They went all in to try and maximize the year on Skubal that they were going to have to try and convince him to stay. And then he gets hurt. And then you lose 16 out of 18. And now it's Memorial Day. You're 12 games under 500. You're having a season like the Mets where you're like, oh, it's a lost season, and now we don't know what we have as a team.
Yeah, and I think that those are 2 teams of the 4 teams that I think are the most disappointing in Major League Baseball. The Tigers would certainly be there. The Mets would be one of them.
The Red Sox would be one of them.
And I would still say the Phillies, because they're under 500, and even though they've played a little better lately, and I do expect they have a better chance to right the ship than the other 3 teams, that's still really disappointing to be under 500.
I think the Mariners would probably also the Mariners.
That's a good point.
And the Blue Jays would probably both be there right now. The Blue Jays have kind of started to climb out of there, but that still leaves them 3 games under 500.
Right. And I think that's a really good point, because I think if I look at the West with the Athletics right now in first place, not sustainable in my opinion. I don't think so. The Astros are bad, maybe.
I think everybody in the West is kind of bad, so it's going to be
the Mariners are going to be okay in the end, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, unless they just kind of don't hit. They've been shut out 6 times this year already.
Oh, Met fans say, "Hold my beer."
Right. No, but the Mariners weren't shut out 6 times all of last season.
Yeah.
Now they've been shut out 6 times before June.
Well, they don't have
the
no
anemic,
Jorge Polanco in that lineup. I know that's really hurting.
Well,
them.
I mean, he was good for them last year, but I think more the absence of Colorado going. We knew he was going to take a step back this year, but we didn't think he was going to be
this far back, right?
An almost unplayable player at the plate, and so obviously when he is not hitting, what we knew was already somewhat of an offensively anemic lineup. When he's not going, he truly has nothing going for it.
Do you think the Rangers can make a run at them?
No.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it either.
Maybe 2-3 years ago, but this is the same. We've done this song and dance with the Rangers for.
I want them to make a run, but there's no.
It's theoretically possible because they have enough collection on the talent of the roster of things.
If guys play the way
they could, they would be good, but they've not done that for since they had that World Series appearance. So
Evan Carter never got back to where he was. Corey Seager is injured enough that even if he's good and he never can sort of sustain it, in terms of picking the team up on his back and do that. He's a great player, but
you can't expect him to carry a team entirely on his own. And I think when you look at these guys,
Wyatt Langford hasn't been what they expected.
And now we've seen all of these young guys come up. We've seen guys like Gunnar Henderson. We've seen guys like Mark Vientos. We've seen guys like Evan Carter, and we have these free-swinging young stars that come up PCA, that they have these initial really hot starts in the league, I think purely because pitchers kind of ego challenge them for a while, and they're willing to throw pitches, and then all of a sudden, okay, yeah, the guy is good enough. Then all of a sudden, the pitchers all adjust to a guy like Mark Vientos and go, oh, if we throw a slider literally at any point in the game, this guy will probably swing at it. So okay, we're just going to do that, and they're never able to make that adjustment. All these young guys aren't making that first adjustment to the pitchers, and now you're running into the situation where right now the league is technically on pace for its lowest batting average since the season before they lowered the mound.
Yeah, and that's I think the story this year, and we talked about that on the prior podcast, is the defensive positioning is so good that I see it all the time. Guys hit the ball sharply, and there's a guy standing there.
Now
it goes right through him.
That is a deceptive statistic because basically every single year offense is down for the first 2 months of the season, and then it always rises, and you will see the league batting average typically go up 3 to 8 points over the course of the rest of the season. So guys are going to start hitting better across the board.
It's funny you say. I wrote a post, I don't know, a year or two ago about, when the weather gets hotter, do the hitters get hotter? And the conclusion was, yeah, kind of.
Right. I think they warm up.
The metrics support it.
And I think the pitchers also start getting a little bit tired, and all of a sudden you start having more games where you have guys giving up hits. You don't have these dominant beginning to end starter to reliever performances that you get a lot in the beginning of the year.
So you mentioned the Guardians, and I agree with you there. The only team I think that has a chance, because I'm counting the Tigers out of it at this point. I don't think they can come back from where they are without Skubal for most of the season.
Right.
I'd say the Royals. I keep expecting the Royals to turn a corner, and given the fact that the Twins, although they swept the series over the weekend against the Red Sox, which ain't saying much these days, there's no other team, right? And that the White Sox, they're kind of amusing that they're doing okay, but that's not a team you think is going to be there at the end. Right. So the Royals are the other team.
And it is interesting that we're seeing across the league that really, with the exception of the Guardians and the Rays, a lot of these defense first, make sure we
run prevention.
Those teams aren't doing well this year. You gotta hit. And you're seeing a lot of teams like the Royals, like the Mets, that they might have one singular superstar in their lineup that's even having a great year. Bobby Witt Jr. is leading the league in WAR, I think. And that's not making a lick of difference.
Except for one guy.
That's not making a lick of difference for their record.
Yeah, and I think the Royals have been doing this for now 3 years or so, and there's no reason when you see something over and over again to think it's going to change all of a sudden.
Right.
So do I think the Yankees will catch the Rays, who are playing unbelievable baseball? Yeah, I do, because like everybody, every week we talk about this. I doubt them. I doubt the Brewers, and they keep making me look bad.
The fun for the Rays fans is we'll all sit here doubting them all year, and there's some years where we'll sit here going until probably about the third week in August going, I guess they're for real.
Right, they're good. So in the National League, the Braves have run away with it in that no other team in the East has really distinguished themselves as being a team that's worthy of going to make a run at those guys. Would you agree with that?
Right, they've played pretty much to their record. I think the best thing for them is that they might not really have to deal with much of anything else for the rest of the East this season. That they're all those teams are all middle around 500. Maybe one sneaks into a wild card, and none are going to actually give the Braves any kind of challenge.
Right. I expect the Phillies to emerge. The Nationals and the Marlins they're better, right? They're more fun to watch. They're certainly a pain in the neck to the Mets, having both of those teams sweep the Mets recently, and so I think that's a plus. And in the Central, I think the same thing about Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, who are having decent years. It's kind of amusing. Maybe they're better than they have been, but they're not ready yet.
That Central, I mean, because it's kind of happened because the Cubs have fallen apart here over the
really
last,
bad stretch.
Really bad stretch. Ever since one of their pitchers went down, it's just been absolute nightmare season for them. And so I think you run into
Matthew Boyd went down a couple weeks ago.
Right, and I think you're just going to run into something here with the Central, that the first team to get hot and go on a run will probably be able to at least get
and maybe the Brewers have already done that.
Right, the Brewers maybe, and they're still only 1.5 games up, so they still haven't given themselves.
I expect the Cubs to be there at the end. I'm not sure. I don't believe in the Cardinals, although good for them that they have done as well as they have for as long as
Ollie
they have.
Marmol buying himself another year.
Yeah, he makes me look dumb because I keep calling for his head, and then they have overperformed, I'd say, this year to their fans' delight at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the West, the Dodgers and the Padres, and we should give the Padres a little shout out.
Hey, I was bullish on them this year.
So they and my friend Tom and his son Jack, and they listen to our podcast in the morning sometimes, and we talk about the Padres not enough, and they are what he said yesterday when we were talking is the Padres are the only professional team in San Diego. And so you have to think about that for a second. So if you're in San Diego, you kind of have to be a Padre fan because there isn't any other team to be a fan of.
Right, and they're doing all this without getting a season from Fernando Tatis Jr. because he's been dreadful now. I think he's at the longest homerless streak of his career.
I think he hit one finally.
Finally, but he had just gone through that. So, I mean, that's a big deal, the fact that they're playing this well without getting anything from one of their superstars.
So so the Padres support, and I don't think about it this way, the fan support is incredible. I mean, the ballpark is amazing.
Right, and they sell out like crazy.
So I think we kind of forget sometimes because in the shadow of L.A. and with the way the Dodgers play, the San Diego Padres sometimes get forgotten. Other than that, in that division, the Giants, well, I was wrong about them, boy. They're I don't know if they're a disappointing team, but they're not a good team.
They're a disappointing team. I'm sure their fans would say they're disappointing.
And then the Diamondbacks, with Corbin Carroll leading Major League Baseball with 8 triples, twice as many as anybody else. I didn't realize he had 17 last year. And while he's good, I don't know that I'm ready to pick the D-backs to make a run at the Padres and the Dodgers.
The best thing for the D-backs right now is that they might not need to make a run for the Dodgers and the Padres.
Everybody else is bad enough.
Right, everybody else is bad enough that you just might get one of the other wild card spots purely off of the fact that you'll be better than all of them right now.
And of the two teams we haven't mentioned, they are tied for the worst record in baseball, and that would be the Rockies in the NL West and the Angels in the AL West. They're both 20 and 34 as of starting to play today. But I think it's more fun. The Rockies are more fun at 20 and 34. They're like more watchable than the Angels.
The Angels, it feels like it's coming to a boiling point there with ownership. Fans are now like, there's just every night there's chance to sell the team. They're just so frustrated because the team feels directionless. At least you kind of have an idea of what the Rockies are going for. You look at this Angels roster and you're like, what are you even doing?
Well, and so here I'll ask you the question right at this point. Do you trade Mike Trout?
Okay, better question. What does that actually do for you?
Turning the page. In
right,
terms of saying we're gonna okay, we this guy was one of the greatest players of all time. We couldn't make it work with him here. Let's
right.
We're not winning.
But you're not trading.
And
Mike,
what are you going to get for him?
Right, that's what I'm saying. This is not trading Mike Trout of 5 years ago. This is trading like right now, like a 230 hitter with solid pop and okay.
Sounds like he'd be a Met,
right? With okay to not great defense. So at best, you're getting like a mid-level prospect from somebody. Maybe you can get a little more purely on name value and like the idea of like, oh, maybe if he plays for literally not one of the most dysfunctional franchises in baseball, he has a bit of a rebound at least this season.
Yeah.
But you're not. All that is doing is page turning for the Angels. You're just like, okay, well now we go from having no idea what we're doing and having Mike Trout to just having no idea what we're doing and not having Mike Trout. Like nothing's really changed other than the absence of Mike Trout.
And I don't want the Mets to think about trading for him or bringing him in as the power, because they certainly need the power. They're not.
What would that accomplish?
But I don't want. No, the Mets have brought up, every outfielder who is in their organization is now on the team. It seems, bringing up Nick Morabito this week, who when he came up to the Mets, and this is following obviously Carson Benj was on the opening day roster, and they brought up AJ Ewing a couple of weeks ago, who's done well. So they had an outfield this week where all three outfielders were rookie outfielders starting at the same time, because Juan Soto, I think, was DHing that night. The thing is that, if you're going to watch a bad team, at least let's watch a young bad team right now.
And even that only goes so far, because watching a bunch of young guys that don't hit the baseball isn't any more fun than watching a bunch of old guys not hit the baseball.
But it's better. You can't say that you'd rather watch MJ Melendez and Jared Young.
To be fair, right now with the Mets, I'd rather not watch, because it's just not like they've scored 4 runs in 5 games or something insane.
Yeah, let's not get into Met fan malaise here, because it goes downhill very, very quickly. But they are so off right now that somebody, Tim Britton, I think, wrote today in the Athletic that they're looking like the 2009 Mets, and that was the first year in Citi Field. And I had season tickets that year. I went to a lot of games. I don't remember anything good about that year other than the ballpark was nice. So that's kind of what this year feels like for Met fans.
And we've had some exemplary things out here going. We've seen, the Nick Kurtz for the A's has had the 47-game on-base streak, which is the longest on-base streak in A's history, which is cool just to see a guy.
Well, actually, McGuire has it over 2 seasons.
Right. Nobody. I feel like 2 seasons, everybody really doesn't count those, because it just doesn't feel good to count those. But more so that, when you look at that, we was a guy that we were saying, okay, here he had a great rookie year. Is he going to be able to continue to reproduce that in his second season? And he's definitely doing that. Maybe not so much as maybe not so much as partner in Jacob Wilson.
And hey, right. And it's not necessarily that he's hitting the ball to the ballpark at the same rate he did last year, but that kind of says he's a better hitter now,
right?
Because he is being selective, and the power is there. We know that already. But I think if you're the A's, you got to be very excited about the fact that he's being more discerning at the plate.
I think one of the more interesting things that you brought up was you posted a Substack post here from Neil Payne showing how the NL is just dominating the AL in interleague play so far this season, which, granted, really small sample size, but still interesting.
Yeah, and Neil went back, and he's got a great Substack, Neil Payne Substack, that the teams over the years, the AL had a stretch where they were better, and that was when the DH came in, and because obviously you have 9 hitters instead of 8, and so they dominated in all-star games, which I never understood was a measure of how good the leagues were, by the way, but people used to think that way. But they won some World Series, and that's another measure. But as it's turned out recently, right, this year the NL is putting it to the AL. I don't know if it really means anything other than I think everybody, if you ask them right now which league is stronger, I don't think any baseball fan would say anything but the National League looks stronger than the AL this year from what I can see.
Right now, right. And I think that's all that really means. I do think it's interesting that, you have this gigantic delta at the moment, but, all that takes is a week or so where you get the Mets and the Rockies playing a bunch of interleague games, and you'll correct that real quick.
At this point in time, that's true. Former Met JT Ginn had a no-hitter into the 9th inning last Monday, so a week ago, and then it all went wrong. He not only gave up a hit, but he gave up a home run, and they ended up losing the game. So he came back off of that great start, everybody loved it, and then lasted 2 innings in his next start and got taken out of the game. So maybe that had an effect on him, as losing that that no-hitter at the end of the game. Chase Burns of the Reds is, I would say, the probably most underrated pitcher in baseball, or the pitcher who's pitching great, who is not known by Major League Baseball fans.
Well, he's a rookie. You can't expect Major League Baseball fans.
But this guy's pitching like a 10-year veteran right now this year.
Right. He's had an unbelievable start to the season, but we've seen, I'm not trying to say that to downplay, but we've seen plenty of rookies come out, look amazing for the first half of the season, and then, oh, wait, baseball is a tale of 2 halves, and that second half does not look the same.
Right. I noticed this week that a guy who signed with the Orioles that's not named Pete Alonso, Taylor Ward, and I thought when he signed there, I thought, he was an angel. He's got some power. Maybe he's having a great year with them.
Yeah, you were not big on that signing, which surprised me, because he was a solid player for the Angels.
So credit to him. Joe Ryan of the Twins, I notice, has been pitching well for a team that isn't very good. And so that tells me that when the trade deadline comes around, he's going to be at the top of the list of guys like, okay, what do you have to give the Twins to get Joe Ryan if you're making a run in one of those teams that's, on the edge? And we don't know what's going to happen injury-wise to the teams in contention,
Right. We're so far away from the trade deadline.
But if the Dodgers think they could use him, they'll probably go and get him because they've got what it takes. You mentioned the Tigers, obviously, so we think that the Riley Green is still continuing to have a good season, considering the fact that there is very little help in the lineup from anybody else at that point. This week, the Mets DFA'd future Hall of Fame closer Craig Kimbrell, who when the Mets signed him, it was like, wow, is he still around? And he came out there and gave up some stuff. And so his last game was Thursday. He pitched 2 scoreless innings for the first time in his major league career, which is wild to me.
You phrased that a little weirdly because I think the wilder thing is that he threw 2 scoreless innings. That he threw 2 innings. Right. That's the crazy thing. He never thrown 2 innings in his career up until that game, and then they DFA'd him.
And it's like, okay, we used you up. You're done. You threw 2 innings. Never did that before. You're finished, and off you go. Another former Met, Dickie Lovelady. I just love calling this. It was Richard Lovelady, and then all of a sudden it was Dickie Lovelady, left-handed pitcher, is closing games for the Nationals, and the Mets must have DFA'd that guy like 3 times or something like that. He was on the team, he's off the team, he's on the team, he's off the team, and for whatever reason, he's gone to Washington, and he's having a good enough season to be in the lead for the closer job in Washington. So I'll go to my story of the week, and I like to look at the third of the way through the season and think about, okay, so we tend on this podcast to say 5 WAR season, and I'm not the only ones that say that, are a measure of a really, really good season for a player, right? You're like star quality when you have a 5 BWAR season. So, and I always look at, when I'm looking at a Hall of Fame, a case for a player, if you have 5+ BWAR seasons, I'm interested now in seeing more of your career, because to be a star for 5 years or more is really a thing to accomplish. So I looked at, after the third of the season, obviously having 1.7 WAR would be about a third of a 5 WAR season. So that's kind of the level I'm going down to. We've got some guys that are obviously far above that, and led by Shohei Ohtani.
Ohtani is almost always going to lead this purely because he's not only a elite pitcher, but he's also an elite hitter, and because nobody else is doing both of those things, he's able to put together WAR numbers that really nobody else is able to match.
So he's at 3.8 BWAR right now, and F4. I think,
and mostly because he's been an unbelievable pitcher.
It's about his pitching. You're right about that, but that would translate to being over an 11 WAR season.
Yeah.
So that's a lot for. Although he may not pitch as well the rest of the season, but he may hit a lot better.
Right. and probably two of the most surprising guys are kind of right behind there. Bobby Witt Jr. is second. He's at 3.3. He's the best defensive shortstop in baseball, and he's the best offensive shortstop in baseball.
On pace for almost a 10 WAR season.
Right.
That sounds right.
Right, exactly. He's probably the guy that is he's going to be the guy at the end of his career that people are going to go, wow, it was really unfair that he had to play at the same time as Ohtani and Judge, because he's probably not going to get the flowers throughout his career that he does deserve.
Yeah, if he has a 15-year career, he might.
He might, right. But then I think the 2 guys on this list that surprise me are obviously Jordan Walker and Andy Paez. Paez is playing the defense. It plays the defense that you expect,
and he always did.
But now he's having an offensive season. Now, granted, the batting average has started to come down closer to where we expected to him based on his career, but he's always had the pop. So when he starts off the season hitting over 310 home runs, he's going to jump out to 3.1 WAR.
Okay, so here's the question for you. He's at 3.1 BWAR. What are his chances of exceeding 5 BWAR this season in your mind? He's got 2/3 of the season to do it. You're not confident.
I don't know. Because it's like, realistically, how much more D-WAR is he going to be able to accumulate past this point? And if he's just hitting home runs without the average, he's not going to be able to get... Will he get another 1.5 D-WAR, basically? Or will he put up another 1 WAR purely off of his offense?
And so then when you do this kind of stuff, that's exactly the point, is that, some guys will not sustain with what they've done to the first third. Some guys who are lower on the list, will exceed that and do better.
Right. We look
Rookie Kevin McGonigal of the Tigers has a 2.8 BWAR. That's on pace for over an 8 BWAR. I'm not thinking that's going to happen at the end of the season.
We expect him to have a Shea Langoliers. He's at 2.6. I wouldn't be surprised if he kept that up. He's a great hitter. He plays at a position where you can accumulate a lot of WAR if you're better more easily because you're so much better compared relative to your peers. A guy like Bryce Terang and Corbin Carroll, I expect them to keep that up. I think there's guys on this list. If you wanted to pick out two guys looking down here that I would say you'd be nervous about, JJ Weatherholt, rookie, and Pete Crow Armstrong, because not only has he now completely cooled off offensively and he's kind of back to what he's been for the second half of last season, he's now embittered in a sort of, he's gone from being the darling to public enemy number one, and it is not easy to dig yourself out of a slump when you're going to get targeted now in every stadium by the fans. You're going to hear it every time you come up, and I don't think he realized he was making himself that kind of target when this all started.
One of the guys on the list who's on pace for a greater than a 5B WAR again is Matt Olson, and so
even year.
Well, no. Go look at Matt Olson. So Joe Posnanski put out this week that Matt Olson is, on a Hall of Fame track possibly. And I thought, really? Well, he's got 42 B WAR. He's 31 years old at this point. He's had 5 seasons of 5+ B WAR, some of them over 8. We know he's a great fielder. We know he had a 54 home run season for the Braves recently. Could he put up another 25 WAR in the next 6 years or something like that? Yeah, I could see that.
Possibly. Yeah, he totally could. He's 32. He'll be 33 at the start of next season.
Mm-hmm.
So
he'd be hurt by a lockout, wouldn't he?
Yeah, right. He is the type of guy that could most significantly be impacted by a lockout in terms of his Hall of Fame career, because losing a season to that is because then all it takes is losing 1 year then to an injury. And he's a guy that has had injury problems previously in his career. And
he's played a lot of games though. He's an Iron Man.
He's missed some time though.
I think he's a guy who's got one of the more longer.
Right, he's been really good
game streaks.
Right. I am incorrect. He's played a bunch. He's played 162 games. He missed a bunch of time in 2019. Right, he missed a bunch of time early on with the A's, but since he's come to Atlanta, he's been a rock solid player where he alternates between putting up 7.5 and 6 WAR and just under 4 WAR.
Still.
So if he keeps, and he's having another year where he looks like he's going to put up a good WAR number, he can totally get there, provided there's no injury or lockout.
You're right about that, and yet at the same time, we know there's a host of players, and I'm thinking about writing about guys that have 60 B WAR that aren't in the Hall of Fame. There's a bunch of them, and so as you've said many times, and correctly so, WAR is an accumulated stat, so you have to be careful about just playing a lot of years. If you play 20 years and you average 3 WAR a season, you have a 60 B WAR. That doesn't mean you're a Hall of Fame player.
Right. You were just a guy that you were shockingly good later on in your career.
You just were consistent for your career, but yeah, obviously
consistency does not make a Hall of Famer.
I completely agree with that. So
you wouldn't. Let's put it this way: if you told somebody, "Hey, you're going to have a guy. He's going to be in your lineup. He's going to hit 260, hit 20 homers, drive an 85 RBIs." And he's going to do that for the next 20 years.
You have Bobby Abreu.
You'd be like, yeah, I'd like him on my team. Would you be like, is that a Hall of Famer? Probably not.
I understand.
Great for your team, not necessarily a Hall of Famer.
So I think that, if you look at, where the stats are right now, you can project out, but you can't count it. Kyle Schwarber has 20 homers. So that would be 60 homers over a season. Yeah, he probably won't hit 60, but he might hit 50.
Right.
And Aaron Judge has 17 homers now after he finally broke his drought yesterday with a game-winning walk-off homer.
Is Murakami or Ben Rice, are they going to hit 55 homers?
It's hard to believe, right?
Maybe one of them, one of these guys could. We saw it happen last year, but at the same time, you also can see how quickly power can vanish, because you have a guy like Cal Raleigh who led the league in home runs last year, who's hit none this year.
So I want to also mention that because I've been following college baseball more closely this year than I have because USC's good. That's why. And they lost the Pacific. That Big Ten championship game. There is no Pacific 12 to UCLA, their crosstown rival UCLA, who's ranked number 1 in the country. And the tournament, the elimination tournament, begins this week in Omaha. So check out the college baseball. We were talking about that just the other day, in that there are a lot more college players that are coming out and making an impact in the major league. So the paying attention to college players is different than it was even 10 years ago, if not more.
It's slightly more relevant, because as much as we want to be following the college because these guys are the guys of your future, it's these guys are the kids of your future. 2-3 years from now. A lot of the time, it's like you might see them, but then you might get stashed in the major leagues and not in the minor leagues and not hear from these kids for a little bit. So you don't expect to be seeing guys like Paul Skeens who dominate in the College World Series and then come straight out to the majors and dominate there are the exception, not the norm. Do not go. It's not like watching the NCAA tournament or the college football playoffs where you're going to be seeing the guys that are going to come to the league and immediately make an impact. That's a lot rarer.
That's an interesting, and I'll do some research on that because that raises the point that you come out of college and you think because you're hopefully closer to 21, 22 when you're getting out of college or whatever happens, you shouldn't need as much seasoning as an 18-year-old kid you just signed out of high school.
Right,
but been in the minors for 3 years.
Right, but that college kid just spent 4 years hitting with metal bats, and he's going to need to learn how to hit with a wood bat against guys that aren't college pitchers.
Yeah. All right, well, and we didn't talk about injuries today because it's kind of not.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes it's fun to not talk about them.
Yeah, exactly. We hate it that baseball players get hurt, but they keep getting hurt. So hopefully, we won't have any big-time injuries this week.